Everyone, there will be no reflections today, so welcome to this meeting of Babergh District Council. I'm Councillor Liz Malvisi and I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. First of all, can I remind you of some of the domestic arrangements? Toilets are situated outside the meeting room, opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told to so do. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I'd also like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. Switched off. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. I'll now move forward to the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have received apologies from Councillor Adrian Osborne, Councillor Brian Riley, Councillor Michael Holt, Councillor David Busby and Councillor Bryn Horan.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Good. I now draw your attention to paper BC 2431 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of November 2024 for accuracy only. Are there any issues with this accuracy? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Saw. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Davis, thank you. By a show of hands, all those in favour? Unanimous, yeah, okay, thank you. That is carried. I now refer you to paper BC 2432 for noting. And I'd like to invite Councillor Saw to make her announcements as leader. Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A great deal of time and energy has been expended responding to central government announcements and policy initiatives, starting with the local finance settlement, devolution, and the unexpected announcement of local government reform. Your Council's finance team has been working on the 25-26 budget for some months when they had to make a radical revision when the government decided to remove the Rural Services Delivery Grant from us, resulting in the removal of £308,000 from our budget. This is being replaced by the new Recovery Grant. However, urban areas benefit disproportionately from this grant, receiving over 7 times more funding than their rural counterparts. The government appears to have misunderstood the purpose of the Rural Services Delivery Grant, which reflected the sheer geographical distances councils have to cover to deliver essential services and ensure they remain sustainable. They believe that grants should reflect deprivation in areas. In our response to the consultation, we pointed out that our district also has pockets of deprivation, coupled with an ageing population that demands support. As councillors will be aware, rural areas continue to face higher costs and reduced services compared to their urban counterparts, with rural residents paying 20% more in council tax and urban areas receiving 41% more in government funding. The white paper on devolution was published on 16th of December, and although the Chancellor in her budget had signalled local government reorganisation, the actual scope of it was a surprise. The Suffolk districts and boroughs are broadly supportive of an elected mayor for a combined Suffolk and Norfolk authority, Given that over the years both counties have had low visibility with central government and have found it difficult to secure attention for our issues and, more importantly, finance. We've had meetings with the Norfolk districts and city and the counties and will be working with county on the approach to unitarisation. As councillors know, we're awaiting a decision at the end of the month from the Minister about whether Suffolk will be on the priority programme, and if he agrees with county that elections should be postponed. I have made my position clear that county council election should go ahead, and this is the view of the leaders of Mid-Suffolk and East Suffolk as well. Not to hold an election damages the legitimacy of the decisions the county leadership takes when it makes decisions about issues that impact on everyone. We will be holding an extraordinary council meeting on Monday 10th of February to give councillors the opportunity to express their views. Car parking charges were introduced on Monday last week. This introduction went smoothly. Residents have responded well, and the reaction on social media has been positive, as well as still having some negative remarks. Refund schemes will be in operation at Roy's, giving Roy's customers 2 hours free parking. We are working with Roy's to have this up and running as soon as possible. There have been some teething problems, but machines, permits, cash collections and parking is operating as expected. I would like to thank the parking team of Matt Smith and Lauren Frost-Saunders and the Public Realm team led by Nick Christo for all their hard work and their exemplary commitment. They went above and beyond. I would like to give an update on the Kingfisher Leisure Centre pool closure and work that has been progressing over the last few months. As you are aware, works to the roof were completed on schedule before Christmas. This involved sealing a damaged panel and installing an additional platform below the glass atrium. Alongside this, we took the opportunity to complete some other necessary repairs to the pool. Unfortunately, in November, a survey unexpectedly found additional structural work was needed in the pool. Works have been progressing as planned, and we're continuing to work with contractors to remobilise the pool as soon as possible. We hope to confirm a reopening date soon and look forward to welcoming back swimmers in due course. And we thank everyone for their understanding and are sorry for this continued disruption. However, we will always put people's safety first. Finally, I would like to just respond to a comment that was made by the leader of the county council in the extraordinary council meeting held to discuss devolution. Contrary to what he thinks, Babergh has no direct investment in Shell, neither does Mid-Suffolk. We do have strategic pooled funds, which are historic and predate this administration. No further investments have been made by the current administration. Knowing Councillor Hicks as I do, I'm sure he would like me to correct this misstatement, and I look forward to him correcting it himself. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Saw. We can move to the next item unless anybody has any questions for clarification. Councillor Newman?
Sudbury car park, Roy's. I was there this morning and all the meters have got bags over and it's just got a sticker on there, free parking today.
Well done.
So is that gone back to free parking now?
What has happened is that we were in discussions with Roy's for some weeks before the introduction of free parking. These discussions are still continuing. We expect to be able to charge for Roy's, and we expect customers of Roy's to get 2 hours free parking. What has happened is that Roy's had some issues that they needed to deal with, So that is why there's free parking. We expect this to be resolved very quickly. And discussions are still going on, as I've explained in my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just following on from your answer, perhaps you can clarify, why is Roy's having 3 car parking and not charging anybody, and yet the other car parks nearby will be? And how long will that be like that? Thank you.
As I've said, Councillor Beer, the issue is that the car park is owned by Roy's, and there are some issues regarding the agreement, which we fully expect to be resolved very shortly. It is agreed that customers of Roy's will get a 2-hour parking for free if they've spent more than £5 in Roy's. And we expect this to be resolved imminently. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to know the basis on which you say public response has been good, because that's not the evidence I've seen on Facebook, and also the evidence in the car parks where the occupancy rate during the week is way, way down.
Thank you, Councillor Clover. Right, 2 points. The response on social media has been, there have been people saying that they can't understand what the fuss is about, it's only £1. I did say that there were still people who did have negative responses, but the response is mixed. As regards the actual number of people who are using the car parks, it is January. The weather has not been great. I would expect that footfall will increase, and we'll be having a look at this in March. And as you know, and if you don't know, this will be coming, the whole thing about parking and usage will be coming to ONS in June. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll now move on to receive notification of petitions in accordance with Council Procedure Rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Questions by the public in accordance with Council Procedure Rules?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. You should stay up.
Yeah, I think it's okay.
Questions by councillors in accordance with Council Procedure Rules?
None received, Chair.
Thank you very much. I now move to paper BC 2433, Cabinet Member Update on the Sustainable Travel Working Group. And I'd like to invite Councillor Helen Davis, Cabinet Member for Climate Change, Nature Recovery and Biodiversity to introduce this paper, which is for noting only. Members will be able to ask questions, but there will be no debate on this item. Councillor Davis.
Thank you. The Sustainable Travel Group was set up in August 24. Its membership is drawn from all parties and includes Catherine Davis, our Sustainable Travel Officer. The group was established to consider the issues and tasks that are related to the provision of sustainable travel across the district and to advise how it can be improved. Babergh District Council faces several challenges which need addressing in order to promote sustainable travel options in Suffolk. We're predominantly rural, with dispersed populations and limited infrastructure. Many areas have infrequent or unreliable public transport services. Public awareness of sustainable travel initiatives are low. There is insufficient funding. That's not really new, is it? Funding is obtained by applying for a variety of different pots, for example, the Bus Service Improvement Plan, or BSIP, via Suffolk County Council. So, what have we been doing? Suffolk County Council offered additional funding for improvements to bus services in the area. This was advertised to parish, town and district councils, amongst others. Babergh provided help to interested parties to enable detailed applications to be submitted. Our most recent application for funding was approved in December. to enable students to catch the bus from Copdock Park and Ride to Suffolk One College in Pinewood, thereby reducing the number of cars parked around the college on residential roads. You wouldn't believe the number of emails I've had on that one. And reducing car use to a degree. Fares will be subsidised to increase the take-up of this bus service. Funding from the previous BSIP funding round has been used to implement improvements to the 753 and 375 buses for Sudbury to Bury St Edmund routes, with additional services and stops in surrounding villages to get to work, school or Sudbury Health Centre more easily. The 84 service from Sudbury to Colchester has been expanded to include extra journeys. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on. Right. Okay. There is also a new hourly service from Bramford to Ipswich via Sproughton that was introduced at the end of last year, which stops at 2 large employment sites on its way into Ipswich. And finally, still on the topic of bus improvements, a new demand-responsive transport service for the Brett Valley running 6 days a week, tied to school, college work times, has been introduced. The service connects with commercial routes in Hadley and Lavenham for onward travel. We are also implementing an e-bike rental scheme. Kingfisher Leisure Centre in Sudbury will be the first site in Babergh to have an easy bike pod installed, enabling visitors to hire a pair of electric bikes. There is sufficient funding for 2 or 3 sites in total, and the remaining sites remain to be picked, and if anyone has any suggestions, I'm very happy to accept those. EV electric charging. In the 23-24 period, the District Council installed 34 EV chargers across Babergh in Hadley, Sudbury and Lavenham. A local electric vehicle infrastructure fund, called Levi, has been set up by the Department of Transport to help residents overcome barriers to swapping to electric vehicles. SCC secured 7.3 million of funding to overcome barriers to on-street charging points and also to fund the improvements to the existing EV charging networks in the community. Babergh publicised the pilot initiative to parish and town councils to encourage them to nominate possible sites. 3 sites in Babergh have been completed and a further 12 sites are due to receive installations. Babergh has put forward a list of 43 potential locations for on-street chargers, and we await the results of the feasibility assessments. In addition, work is already underway to improve part of the river gipping path near Bramford, which is mid-Suffolk, but the additional improvements to the path between Sproughton and Ipswich would provide a viable footpath linking Claydon, Bramford and Sproughton to Ipswich. A SIL bid is being drafted on this. We've also worked with Suffolk County Council to support a public consultation for the feasibility of an improved cycle route from Copdock to Capel St Mary. Of the 96 responses received, 70% agreed the plans improve safety and accessibility for walking and cycling. Detailed feedback analysis is still pending. Babergh is working with ModeShift, which is a company that works across education, business, residential and healthcare sectors to promote sustainable and active travel. Since 2008, over 7,500 businesses, schools and communities have achieved ModeShift Stars accreditation, delivering engaging and effective sustainable and active travel initiatives, impacting millions of people across the country. Babergh continue to facilitate the engagement of our businesses, schools and communities with ModeShift. For example, we are now working with schools who attended the Babergh Mid-Suffolk District Council Schools Green Skills Summit to join ModeShift and implement sustainable and active travel initiatives. So what's in the Sustainable Travel Action Plan? We want to continue development of e-bike and EV charging projects. We want to continue working on BSIP application initiatives. An example would be the Dedham Vale Hopper, which would link up villages and tourist attractions within Dedham Vale and Stour Valley. Continue promoting active travel via school engagements, for example, walking buses. Continue working with ModeShift, and continuing to progress priority LC WIP schemes, an example of which would be resurfacing part of the Sudbury Valley East Bergholt to Manningtree walk to improve the infrastructure for walkers and cyclists in the Dedham Vale, linking Manningtree Railway Station, Flatford, East Bergholt and Dedham. In conclusion, I would say good progress has been made across various initiatives, with a continuing focus on collaboration, obtaining operator interest, community engagement and securing funding, which will be key to Babergh achieving our sustainable travel goals. And before sitting down, I would like to mention one further matter. We're creating a Babergh Biodiversity Working Group and ask for approval of the membership tonight. There is a terms of reference that defines the scope of the group, and we are looking forward to getting started on this in February. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Are there any questions? This is for noting and not, there's no debate. So I'll start with Councillor Glover, then Councillor Beer, then Councillor Grandon, and then Councillor Ward. Okay? I didn't see your hand, so you'll come after Councillor Ward, Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, 4.5, the electric vehicles, EV charging here. Obviously, this is relating to 23-24. We know that the number of bays in most of these places have gone up. But I'd like to know what the occupancy rates. I see that you're monitoring the rates, and actually what gives maybe some concern is the need to, if you're not hitting the levels you want, that you may need to increase the charges. Well, that doesn't seem to me to be a sensible way about going about things, that, you know, that you've got not much occupancy, so you need to put the rates up to cover your costs. It's self-defeating.
Oh, that one's gone. Thank you for the question. You know, EV chargers are relatively new in the district, so to me they're still on trial, and people are keeping an eye on what's going on with respect to occupancy rates. So I think a little bit further down the line we will be thinking about what are the issues and what we can do to resolve them.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, just following on from that point, I think you sold yourself short on Girland Street. There certainly is more than 3 now in existence there, and I gather they're all sort of up and running. So this is a bit out of date. But my question is, I haven't got an electric car, so I don't know the answer to this, but is there a separate charge? Do you go in, you plug in, so you obviously have to pay for the electricity to whoever's providing it. Have you then got to buy a parking ticket on top of that, or is that all included in the car parking charge, the EV charging system that we've got set up? That'll help me think whether I buy an electric car or not.
If I answer the question and then maybe bring you in, thank you. Yeah, I have absolutely no idea on the answer to that question, but I think it's pretty relevant actually, and I would be factoring that into my decisions about buying a purely electric car as opposed to having a hybrid. I will have to come back to you on that one.
Back on that, Madam Chairman, is it possible we could ask our officers? You congratulated all the work they've done. Somebody must know. Thank you.
I asked this question last week. I was asked by a member of the public who was charging their car regularly in Kingfisher, and yes, you have to buy a car parking ticket to charge your car in one of the charging points in Babergh car park charge. The other point you made about the number of car parking chargers, in Sudbury now there are 28 public charging points, including 4 new ones on Sudbury Health Centre, which aren't on that list. And you are quite correct, they've counted the 3 blocks, but each block has 2 chargers on it, so there's 6, so that's 28 in total.
Councillor Grandon?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Clover has asked quite a lot of my question, actually. But again, about EV charging points. I understand that we had a grant to do that, so that's good. And I do understand that we do need to plan for the future. But in my opinion, we're in an interim phase at the moment where we're not that, while you need to encourage EV usage, at the moment there's not enough demand, or certainly there isn't in Hadley. It's once in a blue moon that I see anyone using the EV charging points in Hadley. And in fact, one small particular car park, which is very popular, is now all electric charging. So my question has been for a long time to the officers, can we not, in this interim period, return some of those charging points to normal, traditional, any type of car parking until the demand is there to meet the demand of all of those places? Of course, now that we're charging for parking, there might not be quite the demand for the parking spaces anyway. We have yet to find out, it's too soon to say. But certainly, prior to the 13th of January, there was a lot of demand for parking spaces, but the EV points were sitting empty. They may be needed in the future. So can we do something about that, please? Yeah, I've asked twice my question. Okay. Yes, so I've asked the question. I have asked the question. I've asked the question, yeah.
Yes, I take your point about underusage of EV chargers. I've been in car parks and, there haven't been usage of all the car parking spaces available. Yet I've been at a motorway service station and absolutely every one of them has been used. I have heard the suggestion that maybe if the EV charging spaces are underused, you could have a few that serve a dual purpose, so they could be used to park normal cars. But we've not discussed that in detail. But I can certainly take it forward and come back to you with some thoughts on that.
Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Just one last quick comment on the last discussion. The Director of Operations and the Parking Services Manager are actively monitoring EV charging usage, and there will at some point be a response on that. My question, though, is on the Denvale Hopper, which is a service that's going to be of much interest to many of my residents because it passes through, or hopefully would pass through Layham, Raiden and Halton St Mary. We say here that Suffolk County Council would be interested if an operator could be found. Are we actively looking for an operator, or is Suffolk actively looking for an operator to run this service at this time?
I am not totally certain of the answer to that, so I don't want to give you an incorrect answer, but I will ask Catherine, who has good links to the Suffolk County Council people who have worked on this in the past. So again, I will come back to you.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Chairman. I have 4 questions in total. Page 21, 4.2, and we are talking about Kingfisher, an easy bike pod. Could you, or would you kindly explain to me how this works? Because frequently going to Colchester, all I see are electric bikes dumped on the side of the road, or sometimes in the road. So how are we going to stop that, please?
The Easy Bike Pod is a self-contained unit, and it's kind of levered in and can be levered out if necessary. If you want to book it, you have to register, is my understanding, You take the bikes out, but if you don't return them, you have their contact details. So you can track the people down and ask them why the bikes haven't come back. Maybe not a perfect solution, but where we are so far.
Follow-up question on that. Well, I think you've just sort of answered my issue, really, which is the bikes are going to be dumped anywhere. Excuse me, that's my opinion, Councillor McCraw. That's my opinion from experience from being in Colchester. If you're in Colchester as much as I am, then you will recognise what's happening. My question is, will there be a charge for collection of this vehicle, or a charge for actually, if the vehicle is damaged, for the vehicle to be replaced? Because I'm not certain how this is going to work, and I just have reservations over it.
Yes, he cycles more than I do.
For you to clarify, Easy Bike scheme works like this. You rent the bike, you book it online, you rent it, you take it out of its pod, you cycle around with it, and then you put it back in the pod, which means it's not like a line bike, it's not like any of the other schemes where they're what called dockless bikes and left around. It won't happen. If somebody does take it out, borrow it, and not put it back, it will be trackable because it will have it's got a tracker, and it will be returned. But the person will be charged a really large fine for not returning it. Does that answer your question?
It does, because I've not seen any information about this initiative at all. So it does, thank you. So can I move on to my next question? I've got three more.
Three more on top of
the one you've just had.
So that's number one.
Yes. This is number two. Yes, absolutely. Page 21, we're on 4.3, walking and cycling initiatives, walking buses. Oh, I have to breathe deeply over these because I have seen these not work, set up, not work. My question is, walking buses to school, who will be responsible for providing the adults and the safe passage for these children to the school? I have seen them work. Great Waldingfield failed, Acton failed. I can't remember about Lavenham, they probably didn't do one. But who is going to be responsible for providing the safe passage for these children? Who is going to be paying for the adults to do this?
Yeah, all very good questions. This initiative was actually discussed, I think, in our last Sustainable Travel Group meeting, and we all agreed that this was worth looking at. I think Councillor Carruthers has had some experience of this, so we're going to look at it and think about it. So I would say thank you for raising those points, because they're good points for us to consider. I don't know whether Councillor Carruthers would like to comment on this, as she has more experience in this than I do.
Thank you. I don't actually have any experience of it, but I've been researching it. And from my research of other county councils that have been running the scheme like this in Kent, they rely on volunteers, mainly parents, who get training and who get a high-vis jacket, but it relies on volunteers from the school. So we just have to see. Thank you.
Thank you. From experience, they won't do it. It falls by the wayside. No, that's a reply to Councillor Carruthers. Right, next one. I like this one. Number 5, page 23. You're talking about an LC whip in mid-Suffolk, whereby the District Council is funding design engineer resource. Obviously, people don't come to Lavenham enough, because we actually have an LC whip that's being set up like that at the moment. So perhaps you'd like to have a look at that. And my question is, why has that not been looked at?
Yes. Simply because I don't think I was... Is that better? Okay, now after all that, I've practically forgotten the question. I know it was LC Whip. I'm aware of a couple of LC Whip schemes, but I was not aware of the Lavenham one. But we can look at it.
I am.
And then we've got Councillor Newman, and then I can come to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, of course. Lavenham is very innovative, and you'd be welcome to have a look at this. But there was obviously a gap somewhere in the information. Now, I'm going to go back to children and schools, so we're still on page sort of 21. And my question is, how much collaboration has there been with Suffolk County Council to stop the usage of cars or lots of vehicles to and from schools by encouraging more use of actual buses, as they do in America, which are yellow buses? All children have to go to school on a bus. Now, I know Suffolk County Council are probably going to come back and say, well, it's the parents' responsibility to get the child to school. However, should there not be this type of engagement to see whether in the future there is a better way of getting our very precious children to school safely without all of this traffic disaster areas where we have arguments between neighbours because parents, carers, whoever they are, park over residents' parking areas, or sometimes actually on their drives. So how have you thought of collaboration with Suffolk County Council over this?
I'm actually going to defer to my colleague, Councillor McCraw, to answer this one. He's also on the Sustainable Travel Group.
Yeah, as I hope members don't mind too much, but I previously was a member of the LC Whip working group, and I may be able to throw some light onto the history behind LC Whip schemes and indeed how they relate to sustainable travel. The first instance, the LC Whips was a government requirement made initially.
On Suffolk County Council and
Please,
yellow
I would
buses.
like to come back with this answer. I think it's important. And I'm trying to provide that because it does relate to Suffolk County Council, with whom the LC Whips are in fact vested. The district councils, that is both Babergh and Mid-Suffolk, collect and pull together the various potential schemes on a variety of priority levels. They then submit them to Suffolk County Council, and that is where the connection applies. The ownership vests with the County Council because they, for the most part, are the ones who are deemed to have the money through their transport department. Now, in the instance in your previous question, Councillor Maybury, you asked about the paragraph mentioned there where the District Council is funding design engineer resourcing at the County Council highways level. That is a specific example where that District Council, that is Mid-Suffolk, had enough money to be able to feed that in to Suffolk County Council. They still retain the ownership. Unfortunately, this council does not have that money, but we're investigating whether it is something we can find funds for in the future. So just to put this into perspective, government, county for LC Whip, district for feeding in information on LC Whip and, if possible, funding. And that's as simply as I can put it. This is a very, very difficult area. Local cycling, walking and infrastructure plans do tend to be on the expensive side.
Newman.
Thank you. I do like the e-bike initiative. And a question, can you use the bike and then stop to go in shops to do a bit of shopping or have a coffee and then go to your bike? Or is there possible that it'd be pinched is there a lock or something like that? And I have one more question with that.
The bike comes with a lock, so yes.
Great, thank you for that one. And the other question is, could you put a pod in Great Cornard at the Stevenson Centre as a suggestion? Thank you.
Thank you for the suggestion. Any more are welcome.
Well, then I could use it and go to Sudbury shopping without paying for parking charges.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Chairman. I didn't actually get an answer from the Cabinet member regarding yellow buses and the collaboration with Suffolk County Council.
I don't think we have taken the title, How Do We Get Children to School, yet within our Sustainable Travel Group. There are various different initiatives underway which hopefully all contribute to making it easier to get children to school. I don't see that we'd ever get a yellow bus scheme here. I've seen it working in America, actually. It works really well. But we're not there yet. Don't foresee it happening. So I think it's small incremental improvements where we can, working with Suffolk County Council if they have some funding, in order to try and improve that situation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Beer.
Just following on from that, perhaps when we get a unitary authority, you'll only be dealing with one council, we may be able to do that. So bring that forward as quickly as possible.
It would be lovely if the communication between us and Suffolk County Council was a little smoother.
You're not responding to a question, and that was a statement, not a question. Thank you. Now, if there are no more questions, Councillor Potter.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair.
All right, and then Councillor Carter.
Thank you. Just on the walking, not on the walking cycling initiative, the e-bike rental scheme. I know we've done this to death, perhaps, but just on Alton Water, because I know about the bikeability scheme. I don't know if you've come across it, but it has had quite success with bikers of all abilities. I'm quite surprised, therefore, to see that the possibility of the site was there at first glance, but then subsequently declined involvement. Could you perhaps give a reason as to why that was declined? Also, you want to say alternatives such as Shotley Peninsula, Holbrook and Pinmill are being explored. Could you give some sort of steer as to where we are in terms of where the eventual location will be for that? Will Shotley Peninsula perhaps? And the funding also for 2 or 3 sites in total. So you're saying there's quite a lot of funding there. Can you give some sort of idea of how much we've got left over to those? So those are big areas, big sites. So if you could please.
All right. I have to move slightly in order to try and talk to you and be heard at the same time.
Just speak into the microphone. Don't bother about the rest.
Okay. Okay.
It's to register your voice and what you're saying for the streaming that goes on to the internet.
Okay. With respect to Alton Water, I was really optimistic about this because there's a lovely trail all the way around it, and I was really looking forward to cycling around it. However, Anglia Water, who own that site, did not want to work with us on this one. I don't think we have a detailed reason why. I would rather suspect it's because there is already a bike hire operation there, although at the moment it does not offer electric bikes, but they may have spotted a gap from our question and be wanting wanting to do it themselves, so unfortunately we couldn't get it into Alton Water. With respect to the other sites, those are just suggestions, and we need to look at it in a bit more detail. We have a total of £35,000 in order to provide these, and we're spending, I think it is 18,000 on the first one in the first two years. So there is still money left, and we still need to pick a site. But if anyone does suggest a site, which Councillor Newman has very kindly, we will need to investigate it thoroughly and make certain it is the right place to have it, and there will be sufficient take-up in order to make some money on it.
Thank you. I'm hoping you can just clarify something for me about what I think I know. So when I'm driving in my electric car and it gets a lot lower than I should probably let it get, it shouts at me very angrily and says, you need to charge me as soon as possible. It also flashes up on the screen and tells me the best place for me to charge it, which is a higher wattage charging station. It will tell me where they are, how long it will take me to get there, how many miles I've got, etc. Now, all the ones that we have here are 22 watt or below, so it won't ever tell me to go and charge there. So am I right in thinking that the reason that we have the lower wattage cars is because we have to have a certain amount and we get more for our money by having the lower amount? Because the higher wattage chargers would definitely get more use. Thanks.
That one I will have to defer back onto our Sustainable Travel Officer to come back to you. I don't know the figures. But to my left, Councillor Register might have the answers.
Okay, the reason that we all our chargers are 7 kW, 7 kilowatt and 22 kilowatt is because they're alternating current chargers, and alternating current chargers can't go above 26 kilowatts. The other types of chargers are all direct current chargers, DC chargers. They require much more investment, much bigger. They basically require, if anyone understands this, a three-phase electricity connection, and they cost rather much more money to install. The funding from the Levi scheme only allows basically what's called fast chargers and normal chargers, so 7 kW is the ideal one, if that answers your question.
Grandon, and then Councillor Beer, then Councillor Glover.
Thank you. Going back to e-bikes, you mentioned a moment ago the amount that the e-bikes are costing us. How much usage do you estimate that it would take, or what period of time do you estimate that we would make our money back on the outlay, please?
In terms of the money we make, I haven't got the projected figures with me. We already have the installation at Needham Market, which I know is mid-Suffolk, but we have some numbers and usage numbers from that. So I would need to come back to you, but we would expect it to be broadly in line with Needham Market.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is possibly for Council Register, Councillor Davis, but it's really to do with this revelation that there's a split market in charges in terms of direct current. So has anyone done any research on what size of the market is for both? Because clearly you're excluding part of the market here by not offering direct current.
I think that question is way beyond my technical expertise. If Councillor Register knows, he's welcome to add clarification.
Our chargers are in short-term car parks. The average size of a battery on an electric vehicle is about 60 kilowatts. So if you had a 22 kilowatt charger, that will charge it in 3 hours. so therefore they work for most cases. I have raised the point that having a 7 kilowatt charger in a short-term car park is not of much use to most people. However, I was passing one in North Street the other day, and customers using a plug-in hybrid, and which only had a 25 kilowatt battery and was using it to charge that up, and he says he hasn't put petrol in it for months. So that's a use of plug-in hybrids, which was quite laudable. In terms of the rapid chargers, the very large rapid chargers, demand for those generally involves, is generally off highways, like the A14 closest to us, the M11 and A12. But I do think there probably is demand for at least a few of those within Babergh, but you have to identify where there is demand.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think my question can be answered by Councillor Tim Register, if that's all right with you. I didn't quite understand the rapid charge. We haven't got any of those, you're saying, in the whole of Babergh. And should we not, in the future, look to put some of them in our major towns? Because the rapid charge is very useful. Well, I did. I went through her first, and she nodded, so I... Okay. Forget that, Councillor Register. I'll go back to the... so, can you tell me, we haven't got any rapid chargers in Babergh district, but I think we should be looking to put those in, because at the moment, am I right in thinking that if you wanted to have a full charge, you may have to park your car in our pay car parks for some considerable time to get the required charge up? Is that correct? Thank you.
Again, I don't know the answer to this. Councillor Register, my expert witness, may be able to provide some clarity.
It's something we're discussing, Peter, because we actually raised this as an exact point you've just made, and it's something we'll be looking at in the Sustainable Working Group.
To make a point of information, there is a super fast charger, and it's in a takeaway drive-in, which makes sense. You go in, you get your takeaway, you park up, charge up, and within an hour you're gone. It's in Babergh. I don't wish to name the brand because I don't want to be... but I suppose... Okay, moving on. We now move to the next item on the agenda, which I hope will not take as long as this last one, which was for noting only. But in the absence of Councillor Hurren, I invite Mr. John Snell to propose the paper. Introduce it. I must watch my terminology.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. And apologies, you have me to present this instead of Councillor Hurren, but I'll do my best. So the paper is around, obviously, the co-option of members to the Joint Audit and Standards Committee. So the background to this is, currently the Council's Joint Audit and Standards Committee is purely made up of elected councillors based on the political balance. Though it's not a legislative requirement at present, best practice and a 2022 position statement by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, CIPFA, endorsed by the Department for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, recommended that audit committees and local government should include 2 co-opted independent members to provide appropriate technical expertise, thereby enhancing the effectiveness and knowledge base of such committees. So the proposal was, in July 2024, myself as the head of internal audit presented a paper to JASC to discuss the option of including co-opted members into committees membership with the following options. The first option was to do nothing, and whilst SIPFA guidance recognises that it's good practice for audit committees to include co-opted members, it's not dictated by legislation. This option assumes that the committee may feel that it already has the necessary skills and technical knowledge to fully fulfil its terms of reference. The second option was to agree to include co-opted members to the committee at the earliest opportunity to supplement the experience of the current elected members. The decision of the JASC was to support option 2 as a proposal to full council here today. So the proposal, as set out in the report, would be that co-opted members would be politically independent and would be bound by the Code of Conduct in the Council's Constitution. The Council's Constitution would need to be updated to allow for their inclusion. The Constitution would also be very clear that whilst the views of the co-opted members may be considered by the committee, the co-opted members may not vote on any items. The changes to the Council's Constitution would need to be considered by the Constitution Review Panel and then by full Council. It is suggested that the co-opted members would be appointed for a 4-year term and that they may serve a maximum of 2 terms of 4 years. This approach is consistent with the Suffolk County Council and will provide some continuity for the committee between elected administrators. The Independent Remuneration Panel met on the 17th of December 2024 and recommended that an allowance for each co-opted member, if approved, be £712 per annum. Travel expenses would also be paid in addition to this amount, in line with the travel and subsistence allowance rules in Schedule B of the Member Allowance Scheme in the Constitution. The skills that candidates should be able to demonstrate would include analytical skills, effective communication, scrutiny and challenge, open-mindedness, and capable of developing good teamwork and effective relations with other members of the committee. The membership of the interview panel would need to be agreed, but best practice would suggest this is made up of both JASC chairs, the Section 151 officer and the monitoring officer. Recommendations for appointment would be made on merit and ability judged against the job description. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Snell. I would now invite a member to come forward as a proposer for this. Councillor Register and a seconder. Councillor McLaren. So we now have a proposer and a seconder, and we move to questions. Councillor Newman.
I'm not against this, but are we sure that we can check that we haven't got the talent in this chamber before we start getting someone else in? That's what my question is.
I'll ask the head of internal audit to reply.
Thank you, Chair. As obviously JASC is my committee, I would like to actually, without wishing to embarrass JASC members, that they are very capable, but the idea and the recommendation from SIPFA is to enhance the already existing skills to provide a better effective service. That was put to JASC and they agreed on this. So I think the vote was about 7-3 in favour of this. So they recognise that some additional expertise would be most welcome, but they are also very talented in themselves.
Thank you. Any other questions for clarification? Councillor Wyman? And Councillor Parker? No? Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
And then Councillor Maybury.
I think it's commendable that JASC are now considering bringing in an independent auditor separate from the organisation. This practice is wide across both local government and education, so great news. My question is, also across local government and education, many audit committees receive support for their risk management processes, and I did notice that your risk management review process is now been pushed back to February. I think within a risk aware society with several operational risks that the council and the council companies regularly undertake. It's something which we should be considering.
Thank you, Chairman. Appendix B, page 34, number 2 says future considerations. It states if no suitable candidates are found after advertising the co-opted positions, the decisions will be revisited by the independent remuneration panel, taking into account any feedback. Is this because you're worried that there's... Actually, this is in 2 parts, this question. Is it because you're worried that people won't apply because there's not enough money in it? And the second part is, if that is the case, and it's recommended by the independent remuneration panel that more should be paid, will that come back to council?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, there's always a risk that we don't get any applicants or candidates coming forward. That may be because of the money that's involved, or there may not be anybody else out there that the required skills that we're looking for. If that is the case, yes, that would go back to the remuneration panel to discuss and debate further. And if they decided or recommended that the allowance is increased, I would expect that to come back to be approved at full council.
Questions, or can we move to debate? And who would like to open the debate? Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm absolutely delighted that the head of audit is satisfied with the competence of the committee, but I, for one, feel audit and standards, in my experience, were not to do with finance. And one of the reasons that I'm fully supporting this recommendation is that it will help me in a gap in my knowledge and experience. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to debate? We'll move to the vote. Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office will now conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, members. That vote is now in progress. Councillor Beer, may I take your vote, please?
Approved. Thank you.
Councillor Brandon, may I take your vote, please?
4.
Councillor Nunn, may I take your vote, please? Sorry. Oh, thank you. Thank you, members. Chair, that is 27 votes for, and so that's unanimous.
Unanimous, thank you very much. We now move to paper BC 2435, Gambling Act 2005, Statement of Principles for 2025 to 2028, which is a statutory 3-yearly revision. I would like to invite Councillor Lee Parker, Chair of Licensing and Regulatory Committee, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendation in the report.
Chair, thank you very much. The Gambling Act 2005 requires licensing authorities to publish a written policy setting out how they propose to carry out their licensing functions, the principles they'll follow, and the expectations of licensees. This policy must be reviewed every 3 years. However, it will also be reviewed as changes occur, ensuring that it is fit for purpose. As part of this review, there have only been minor amendments made, as gambling legislation has seen fewer changes in recent years, with most changes affecting remote gambling, which is regulated by the Gambling Commission and not licensing authorities. The summary of changes are detailed in Appendix B, which is at page 93. It's worth noting that as part of this review, the draft policy was subject to a 6-week consultation, during which, pertinently, no representations were made or objections received. So I'm pleased to propose the recommendation at 3.1, and I will seek a seconder. We have our Head of Public Protection, Tracy Howard, with us in support. And if I can't answer any questions, if Tracy can't answer any questions, then I'm sure Councillor Register will be able to answer all questions. I move, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure you'll be able to answer this, Councillor Parker. Pleased to say it. It's the normal sort of thing that's been going on for some time now. But in the consultation period, did you have any comments or any suggestions how it could be improved or anything, or was it just, as you said, nothing at all?
My understanding, Councillor Beale, was that there were no representations, no objections whatsoever. Tracy, can you confirm?
No. Hiya, sorry. Yeah, we didn't have any representations whatsoever. What we've done is actually we've brought the two policies, like so Babergh and Suffolk together as one policy for consistency as well. So they weren't that different, if I'm honest. It was more about style and formatting. And as Lee said, the main change is the remote gambling, because we're seeing, you know, massive growth area in mobile phones and TV and internet gambling. So the Gambling Commission are really focusing on that and capping amounts that people can gamble. So, but for us, it's business as usual at the minute. So, thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Ward and then Councillor Potter.
I note that two of the changes were to clarify in section 6 that we don't have any casinos here, and we're not one of the designated areas that is allowed to have casinos. Does that not really make the rest of section 6 in this paper redundant? Because it's still talking about casinos and could be a bit confusing because it doesn't really apply anymore, or never has applied.
Yeah, and that's a perfectly reasonable point, Councillor Ward. I suspect that there's a technical reason why it needs to remain. I will defer to Tracy. Thank you.
Yeah, at the last review of the policy, there was a separate resolution for casinos that was felt at the time by Babergh District Council. That wasn't required in Mid-Suffolk to establish or determine that there shouldn't be any casinos at all in our district. But the Gambling Commission, before then, I think it was 1968, there was a decision that only certain areas can have casinos. So we can't have them anyway in either of our districts unless there's a change in policy in the future, but I very much doubt that. So in section 6, it's captured just to describe and illustrate what's happened there. But if there's any amendment, we can make those minor amendments going forward if you feel that's necessary. So.
Right, next is Councillor Councillor Potter before you, and then Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Chair. Yes. So on the categories of people on 4.4, the 6-week consultation period that took place, I know it says in the consultation, in line with the Gambling Act requirements, it lists already the categories of people that should be contacted. But for the purposes of the fact we have a public meeting, while it's welcome no objections were received, could we be clear about the demographic of who were approached?
I will defer that one, Councillor Potter, if that's all right. I don't know the answer to that one, actually.
No problem.
Yeah, I mean, from a consultation perspective, that all of the community and demographic were consulted on this in the same format. No particular group was targeted individually unless they were listed within the policy and consultation. So it's been a fair process, and there was no requirement to do any equality impact assessment for this consultation. We've had no engagement whatsoever, and perhaps it's because people could see that there weren't many changes that applied to our local authority in the way that we deliver this service. So if that answers your question.
It does, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask, given that this policy reflects what the Gambling Commission asked for, Did we reach out to charities or support networks for problem gamblers and ask them for their advice?
If we did contact them, excuse me, I haven't got that detail. It will be stated within the report and consultation document. Some consultations obviously deal with local charities, but because Gambling Commission do a lot of work on that. But we are consistent with other local authorities in who we've consulted, and we've engaged and networked and benchmarked against other policies as well nationally.
Did I see your hand go up? If we finish, Councillor McGraw.
Just a point of clarity, Chair. This is, as I understand it, not part of the Gambling Commission's remit. This is the Gambling Act and is in fact our licensing function. I think I'm correct there, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's a bit both actually. The policy determines whether we've got the legal statutory duty to licence particular premises, and if we get ones that are for the Gambling Commission, we'd refer those on. So.
Thank you. As the questions have finished, we'll now move to the debate. Councillors will only be allowed to speak once and for a maximum of 3 minutes, and this will be timed. Who wishes to open the debate? I move to the vote. Thank you. I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance Civic Office.
Thank you. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Beer.
Approve.
Approve. Thank you. Councillor Nunn. Thank you. Councillor Grandin. 4. Thank you. Councillor Hendry. 4. Thank you. Councillor Newman.
4.
Thank you.
Not lighting up.
Councillor Clover.
I've just voted for.
Thank you. Thank you, members. That's 27 votes for, so that's carried.
Thank you very much. We'll now move forward to paper BC 2436, Housing Revenue Account, the HRA, Business Plan. I'd like to invite Councillor Jessie Carter, Cabinet Member for Housing, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendation in the report. Councillor Carter.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the Housing Revenue Account is a document that sets out our long-term vision for council housing across our district. This 30-year plan is designed to ensure the financial sustainability of our housing services, meet evolving national and local housing standards, and respond effectively to the needs of our residents. It aligns directly with our corporate vision to create a resilient, sustainable future for Babergh communities and support both our housing and environmental priorities. This business plan is not just a financial tool, it is a clear demonstration of our commitment to ensuring the best outcomes for tenants and communities while remaining financially prudent and compliant with regulatory requirements. Our financial strategy focuses on maintaining a minimum HRA reserve of 1 million over the 30-year plan, ensuring resilience against future economic uncertainties while enabling vital investments in the housing services. Currently, the HRA carries a total debt of just over 94 million, and borrowing beyond current loans will be required to maintain the scope of our capital works. The interest coverage ratio, which measures our availability to meet debt obligations, is projected to exceed 1.25 times over the third year of the plan, increasing to 1.63 times by year 30. Rent increases are a key component to our financial strategy. These will rise by 2.7% in April, followed by CP1 plus 1% until 2030, and then CPI only adjustments therefore. This approach balances affordability for tenants with the need to fund crucial housing programs. Key investments include 524,000 annually for disabled adaptations, 212,000 per year for neighbourhood improvements, and an average of 1.956 million annually for decarbonisation projects over the next 4 years. These initiatives are not only essential to meet regulatory and environmental standards, but also reflect our commitment to improving quality of life for residents. The business plan is built on 7 key priorities, all informed by extensive tenant engagement. Investing in our current homes. We are committed to maintaining and improving the quality of our housing stock. This includes the development of the 10-year capital investment programme to meet the decent home standards and ensure timely and efficient maintenance. Smart home technologies will also be introduced to reduce fuel poverty and improve maintenance efficiency using real-time data to anticipate and address issues. Adapting to climate change. Sustainability is a core focus with a commitment to retrofit 100 homes by 2028, supported by grant funding. By 2030, all council-owned homes will meet an EPC rating of C, ensuring energy efficiency and reducing carbon emissions. Increasing housing stock. The development of affordable housing is essential to address local demand. 14 new homes are set to be completed by 2026, with future developments contingent on external funding. However, we must remain vigilant about the challenges posed by the Right to Buy scheme, which is projected to reduce our stock by 6 homes annually until 2037. Improving tenant services. Enhancing tenant satisfaction is a priority. A new customer relationship manager system will streamline communications, ensure data accuracy, and improve the efficiency of service delivery. Regular feedback through surveys and tenant involvement in governance will ensure services meet their needs and expectations. Enhancing neighbourhoods. The HRA Greater Places scheme will deliver targeted improvements to neighbourhoods, including environmental enhancements and tailor community projects. These initiatives aim to foster pride, well-being and satisfaction among residents. Promoting tenant involvement. A strong tenant governance framework is being established to ensure residents have a voice in decision-making. Tenants will have opportunities to scrutinise services and hold the council accountable for performance. Implementing digital transformation. Housing management systems will be upgraded to meet modern standards, enabling better data-driven decision-making and improving tenant interactions. This plan recognises several key changes, including financial pressures arising from inflation, welfare reforms, and rising regulatory expectations. The Decent Home Standards 2, the Social Housing Regulation Act 23, the Building Safety Act 22 place increased demands on housing authorities. Babergh is well positioned to meet these requirements through proactive governance, strategic financial planning, and tenant-focused solutions. As I've mentioned, we are also addressing the reduction of housing stock due to the Right to Buy scheme. While stock reduction presents long-term challenge, the plan includes strategies to reinvest Right to Buy receipts into new developments and maximise external funding opportunities. Environmental obligations represent another area of focus. Meeting the 2030 EPC rating C requirement is non-negotiable, and we will work collaboratively with partners to achieve this milestone while educating tenants on energy efficiency and sustainable living. The business plan has been shaped by extensive consultation with tenants, members and other stakeholders. The tenant engagement strategy, launched in 2022, has been instrumental in guiding our approach, and over 1,000 tenants participated in surveys that informed our priorities, from neighbourhood improvements to service delivery enhancements. We are committed to ongoing engagement, ensuring tenants remain at the heart of our services. So the business plan is a comprehensive and forward-thinking document that balances financial sustainability, regulatory compliance and tenant satisfaction. It ensures Babergh Council Housing Services are resilient, sustainable and equipped to meet future challenges. I urge members of the Council to support this plan. By adopting it, we reaffirm our commitment to delivering high-quality homes, fostering thriving communities and meeting our environmental responsibilities. The plan is not just a strategy, it is a pathway to a better future for Babergh and its residents. I would like to thank everyone that's had any input in this, has worked on this at all, and a big thank you to officers who have worked on this for a really long time and put their everything into it. So I welcome and encourage any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Ward. We'll now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion, must be a question, and must not be of a personal or commercial nature. First question, Councillor Maybury, then Councillor Jameson, then Councillor Clover.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll ask my questions one at a time. I'll come back. My first question is page 95 under 4.1. We're talking about the introduction of the Decent Home Standards 2 and the minimum level of housing qualifications for housing managers and managers. Would you very kindly explain to me what at present are the qualifications, what the qualifications will be in the future, and where they are displayed?
Where they are displayed for public knowledge, or where they're displayed for us to see, or both? Sorry.
Both, but particularly in the tenanted properties that have a manager.
Okay. So although I am not sure on the exact qualifications, I am aware that staff are being looked at to make sure that they are working up to scratch. And if they are not, if they can be trained in such a way that is, or if they can be replaced by someone who is good enough, because we're trying to give everyone the best that we can. So I'll pass over to Deborah if she wants to give the exact qualifications. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening. There is no specified qualification at present for staff who work in housing. However, organisations such as councils and housing associations will often advertise for officers' posts that have got a Chartered Institute of Housing qualification, although, as I've just said, that's not an absolute requirement. The Regulator of Social Housing is bringing in a new standard, which is the Conduct and Competency Standard, which is about having qualifications and the conduct of staff. The qualifications will be a housing level 3, 4 or 5, depending on your level in an organisation. That standard is not yet out, so the devil will be in the detail, and we'll be quite happy to report when that is available. In terms of whether tenants can see whether our officers have got qualifications, as it's not currently a requirement, that's not something we provide.
You have a further question? You have.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm very sad to say that I'm quite disillusioned.
Is that a question?
No, that's a comment, because the question is coming. I'm very disillusioned. And why I'm disillusioned is the state of our out of hours emergency telephone line. It is no surprise to Deborah Fenton or to the Cabinet member about this. 2 Saturdays ago, I had a telephone call on a Saturday at 5:10 from a resident who'd been trying for 2.5 hours to contact Babergh out of hours because of a serious burst pipe, which during the time it was very freezing and it was a danger to everyone. She tried for 2.5 hours. I tried for 31 minutes because I had a house full of visitors. I contacted the resident the following morning, and she had managed to contact them by 7 a.m. Question is coming, don't worry, you need all this background, you really do. The concern I have is Why could our residents not contact the out of hours or have at least a reply? The next part of the question is, why is our out of hours service settled in the Midlands? The next part is, why is the out of hours service in an American accent that cannot pronounce Babergh, because I couldn't hear what that she was saying, or this voice was saying. And my last is, how on earth are we going to make sure that this that's coming forward, this business plan, will actually take into account the issues with our out-of-hours service, and how is this going to be finally sorted? Because this is not the first time I've had something like this, but it was definitely the most serious.
Yeah, so when Councillor Maybury contacted myself and officers and others about this, it was awful and it was horrible to hear, and it sounded like, I don't know, something out of a dispatches show that you might watch, and it isn't good enough. We know it isn't good enough. There have been lots of things in the past regarding housing that isn't good enough, and I think we're holding up our hands and saying it needs to be fixed. I haven't come across another case like this. I know of 2 cases where they've contacted out of hours emergency, myself being one of them. And I managed to get through quite quickly, and I know the other case managed to get through quite quickly. So I do not know why in this instance they didn't, but it is unacceptable, and there should be a formal apology to the tenant for what happened to them. But I know that Deborah has personally looked in and is looking into these things, so I'll pass over to her.
Part of what I have not explained, and councillors may wish to know, this resident knew far more than I did about our out-of-hours service, and so they probably should, because they're a tenant. And she was told by the out-of-hours service that they had 60 unanswered calls that day. And I think that is even more worrying.
Yeah, it is. Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I don't have the answers here today. I think I need to go back and speak to my colleagues who manage the out-of-hours contracts to understand what key performance indicators are in place and whether those need to be reviewed, and then report back.
Thank you. Next question. I'm presuming, Councillor Maybury, that you've completed.
Thank you. Honestly, this is why I was elected, because I ask questions. Right, my last question is, could you please tell me, for clarification, exactly how many Babergh properties have an EPC of under grade C, please?
I don't know the figure off the top of my head, but I do know that we're working towards it. So do you know the exact figure?
So I don't know it off the top of my head, but we aspire to have all our properties at an EPC level C by 2030, which is the government, the government standard. Other than those that are listed, which we'll have to take a view on.
Councillor Maybury.
Thank you. Perhaps all councillors could have that figure within 7 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jameson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions.
Okay.
Firstly, I'd like to say that our housing team are dealing with a lot of issues, and there are problems, as Councillor Maybury pointed out, but I've been impressed with the way they're trying to get to the bottom of all the problems with housing, and congratulate them on the work they've done so far. Let's say a couple of questions. On page 104, it states that the plan is that by spending more on assets, the revenue spend will go down. However, looking at the graph, it suggests that the revenue spend is going to stay consistent for the next 10 years. So I just wondered if we've got an idea of when we're expecting the revenue spend to go down, firstly.
Or do you wish one of the officers to?
Yeah, I was just seeing if I had a note, because I don't know off the top of my head. I will pass over if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. The revenue spend will never reduce. The revenue spend will always increase as costs increase.
Okay, so it just that says the revenue spend will go down on that, to that graph, is that not? Or have I misread that?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
My laptop's now gone. It just says on page 104, I think it was. That currently the revenue spend is outweighing the capital spend. Our plan is to switch that around by investing in properties, spending more on assets. We will in turn reduce the spend on repairs and maintenance.
Sorry, Councillor, I understand now. So what that means is at the moment we're spending far too much money on our repairs because we're being reactive instead of looking at our assets over a 30-year period, having a planned programme of updating kitchens, bathrooms, roofs and heating. So what we've done is we've turned that around, and we've got planned programmes in place now, which are so we've got new contracts which are starting in the new financial year, and what will happen is our capital spend will increase, and over time our revenue spend on repairs should reduce.
Okay. We've got no timeline of when that will happen.
So we've only just got our stock condition survey data in, so it takes time to analyse that, and then we need to develop our asset strategy. So there's a process we need to go through first.
Okay, thanks. Second question, on page 118, we say we've got 916 people on the housing register, and do we have sort of an average time of how long people are waiting to be rehomed?
Well, I think it's how long is a bit of string, really. It depends on the houses that are available. It depends on what area they can go in, where their local connection is, who is moving out, what their criteria is. I wouldn't say there is necessarily an average. We aim for it to be as quickly as possible because you don't want someone in temporary accommodation, facing homelessness, whatever the challenges may be, but we have the stock that we have, and I think what's important about this business plan is saying that we don't have enough, and we definitely need more, and we need to work with others to ensure that we have more. So that isn't an exact answer, I'm really sorry, but it does just depend on what's available and when.
Thanks. And lastly, do we know how many of our homes still fail or currently fail the decent home standard?
I do not, no, sorry.
So we have had our stock condition survey back, and we are currently reconciling the figures, so we should have that information within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I can direct you to page 124, priority 2, tackling and adapting climate change, and I'll try and wrap the questions up, although there's a number. I'm really interested to know this. I understand the thinking behind retrofitting 100 homes. Now, that's across the 2 districts. So firstly, how many of those relate to Babergh? And then, how are those, whatever that number, if it's 50, how are they selected for retrofitting? You know, is it on a first come, first served basis? Is it worst case scenario? Because I have to say, I think that 50 is a very low bar, and in actual fact, my feeling would be it's probably better not to say anything than establishing a small target, because you're also indicating that there are those that will get it and there are those that won't get it, and therefore, you know, how's that decided and how's it fair on the people that don't get it? Mm-hmm. Thank you.
No, I completely agree with your last point, and it would be great to do it to everyone. So it does say at least 100, so it isn't so much as that is a target, but that is the very least, and the plan would be to obviously have more, and I believe it is roughly 50-50, but it will go to the homes that need it most, so in the worst condition, to be able to bring them up. But there are plans to go for other grants, other funding, so hopefully those figures will climb up.
Okay. Before I go to Councillor Henry, Councillor Rees, did you want to ask something? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to ask on page 96, sorry, wrong glasses. In the links to Babergh Plan, it mentions improving the services that we provide to our tenants. Now, I understand that 72% of the complaints that were received, was it last year possibly, related to housing. Have specific areas of complaint, those specific 72% of areas being identified, and how have they been addressed? Are they being addressed in the business plan? Thank you.
So like I've previously said, we know where we've gone wrong in the past, and that is definitely one of them. So we've been engaging with tenants as much as possible to find out what it is that they want from us, what they need from us. So we'll have things like the new tenant handbook, which will give people more information as soon as they move in, and for people in existing homes, we'll also have a copy. Things like when people pick up the phone to speak to someone, making sure that those calls are answered in a significant amount of time, making sure that when people have an issue like a boiler leak, or anything, for example, that they are carried out within a timely manner. There's obviously like a pecking order. If it's a complete emergency, we should be there instantly. If it's something like a hole in a bath panel that isn't causing any issues, then it will be slightly less down the line. But I think what is really important to us is engaging with tenants and finding out what they want. And I'd say that we're doing that in a number of ways. And the tenant board across Babergh and Mid-Suffolk have been really helpful, because they're the ones that are living it. And we've been working with them to, as I said, find out where the problems are and where we're going wrong. Staff are being trained and make sure that they're competent for the job, make sure that they're confident for complaints handling. As I've already mentioned, I'm a council tenant myself, and I've been there quite recently, if I'm honest. And so I know how frustrating it can be. But if you look at where we were 2 years ago, if you look at where we were 5 years ago and keep coming back, it is slowly progressing. I would like it all to happen in a week's time. I would like it to have all happened 2 years ago. but it does take time to look at where you've gone wrong. It takes time to look at training staff and all the things that need to be done. But if Deborah wants to add anything more eloquently than what I've put, I'll pass over.
Thank you, and as councillors alluded to, we're very aware of where our complaints are, and we know, because we analyse our complaints on a weekly and monthly basis, that since that report was received, it covered the year. There's been a significant improvement in our performance in housing with regards to our complaints, and we've also employed some specialist officers, resident liaison officers, who, amongst other things, do meet with tenants and go and visit tenants who've complained to make sure we can absolutely get it right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Henry.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding priority 3, which is on page 125, which is regarding building and buying new council housing. Now, it says here, we'll work with partners to provide new homes at affordable rent or for affordable home ownership and, where financially viable, social rent. Now, along with working, the new MPPF has stated that we need to give more focus to social rent as opposed to affordable rent, which I think is something we all agree on. But my question is that, as far as I'm aware, it's only really the council that offers social rent, and our partners, our registered provider partners, tend to offer affordable rent. So if we're going to put more focus on having more houses available for social rent, how are we going to achieve that? Is that all going to come down to us building more housing, or is there options at working? Who can we work with that would be prepared to offer social rent? And have we thought about the new MPPF when compiling the report? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Carter.
You're all right. Yeah, that's a brilliant question. Deborah? Thanks.
Thank you. I think it's fair to say that housing is broken, particularly the funding for housing, and here at Babergh we're not alone in the fact that we will struggle to do any development ourselves, and we'll need to partner with housing associations. They too are in a difficult financial position in terms of what they can afford to build, which is why when they carry out their feasibility studies, it is often affordable rent rather than social rent. That said, we are expecting some news from government in terms of what it's going to look like for housing providers like us and RPs moving forward in terms of developing and meeting their aspirations. So I think, unfortunately, it's a waiting game.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Newman, did you wish to ask a question?
Yeah, just a question. I think I spoke to Jessie Carter a few years ago about retrofitting and about properties in Great Cornard, and I hope that you haven't forgot that we do need some retrofitting on the estate in Great Cornard, like Kersey Avenue, Chelsworth Avenue, like some of the bungalows. They're such a mess, you wouldn't believe it, the damp on the walls and everything. And because I have been in several of those properties and they have shown me, I think we've done one or two down there, but I hope you won't neglect Great Cornard when you're dishing out these retrofits. I know a lot of people do want them, but the council houses in Great Cornard are getting quite old, and especially the ones I was speaking to you where they're flat roof bungalows. So I hope you bear that in mind, our discussion we had a few years ago.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of houses in Cornard that could do with a lot of work. I think that's the good thing about the stock condition survey, is that we now know exactly what is on the table. As I said, those that are worse off will be the first to go, but that doesn't mean we're going to neglect anything that needs any work done.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Saw?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to know what the impact of the changes to right to buy will have on our housing stock. I note in the report we say that 52 properties were sold through Right to Buy in 2020 to 23, and we have said that we are using the receipts of these Right to Buy to help us build any new houses. But obviously there are going to be changes to that, and that I expect will diminish those receipts. So my question is, what do we think the impact will be? Oh, and I have another question, but
if I can just start by saying, in principle, personally, I think the Right to Buy was a good idea. However, it hasn't worked because the houses haven't been replaced, and
exactly.
we're the ones that have been having to pick up the shortfall from that, and because of that, now our waiting lists are so long. So the receipts that we get from the Right to Buy are never going to be enough to be able to replace the houses that are being sold. So I would say eventually it will have to come down to grants, to funding, to some help from the government until they sort it out. But thank you.
Thank you. And as you alluded to, Councillor Saul, there will be a reduction in, in capital receipts for the council. As housing professionals, we are hoping that there will be some leniency from government, and we will be able to use those receipts to carry out improvements to our current homes. But until we know whether that is going to be the case, we just know that there'll be a reduction, and should we be in a position where we're not developing as a council anymore, but we're still getting receipts from Right to Buys, at that point we would be further developing our relationship with RPs and trying to develop a partnership with those RPs so they can build using our receipts and we can have the allocation rights.
Thank you. Councillor Saw, did you have another question?
Yes. Yesterday I was listening to the DCN presentation on their blueprint for affordable housing, and they obviously had a series of recommendations, and I would like to know your opinion on some of those, given that they say give councils a legally protected 10-year guarantee of their rental income, so we can plan and fund new council housing. And apropos of what Councillor Clover was suggesting, introducing a higher grant for energy efficiency development. I mean, our difficulty at the moment is that the funding in we're now going for, I believe, Social Wave 3, isn't sufficient to fund wholesale retrofitting, although I know we are looking at housing which was oil-fired, which is obviously a big thing. And the other one was reinstating the empty houses programme, the empty homes programme, which I have to admit I didn't know had stopped. So I would really like to know, as you are both the experts, what you think about those particular recommendations and whether we should be adding our voice to them as well.
So regarding empty homes, that is definitely something that we should be standing behind. There are far too many, especially within the district. I'm sure we all walk past them all the time. Regarding your first question, I am sure that Deborah's opinion is much more qualified than mine, so I will let her answer. Thanks.
Thank you, and members will be aware that we, in fact, do fund an empty homes officer here in Babergh, which is very positive. In terms of the seminar yesterday, which I also listened to, and the proposal around the 10-year rent settlement, I did raise a question and the point that a 10-year rent settlement for the majority of housing providers, us included, will not be enough to get us building again, because we have the overhang of the changes following the the self-financing settlement in 2012. So unless government is minded to do something around that, although it will give us security, it won't in fact get us building again. No.
Thank you.
I totally agree.
If there are no questions, can we move to debate? Councillors have 3 minutes maximum to speak once and once only. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Quite an interesting discussion about buying or acquiring new housing. Obviously, the issue with right to buy and the fact that throughout most of its time we've only been able to retain 30% of the receipts has had an impact on how we replace the stock we lose. There was a period when 100% of receipts were retained, and then I think they're talking about doing that again. But the government is changing the right to buy, or proposing to change the right to buy criteria, so we may well be selling less of those. But the key problem is that we simply don't have, and you've seen from the report, the funding to be able to increase the number of housing within our stock to the levels we would like to meet our demand. And this is not just impacting us, it's impacting other registered providers and also councils around the country. Without significant government funding, it's not going to be possible to increase our stock levels by the numbers we really want, and indeed by the numbers the government would like to see. They talk about a lot more social housing, a lot more affordable housing, but there has to be a way of funding that to provide that. I mean, the important thing is we're looking at the business plan here, and what we have is a business plan that provides a stable basis for our housing revenue account over the next 30 years. It already explains that one of our big problems is the revenue spend, particularly on repairs and maintenance. We need to get that under control, and the increased capital spend is entirely designed to do that. We need to get it under control because it's having the revenue spend is having a huge drain on our reserves in the HRA. But you'll see from this business plan that we have been able to stabilise those reserves throughout that 30-year period. Indeed, in the last 2 years of the period, they do increase by a reasonable amount. So we have a stable business plan here that allows our HRA to be something that we know is going to be an account for our housing that will provide us with the ability to maintain our stock over that 30-year period and to improve it and to increase the energy efficiency of the houses. We need this to ensure that the HRA is fit for the future, and I think it's something we can be proud of. There's been a huge amount of work gone into it, and I'm very happy to have seconded it and will support this.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to speak? Or Councillor Carter, would you like to wrap up before we move to the vote?
I can do. I don't know if I can follow what Councillor Ward has just said, sorry. But I do think it is really important to look forward and to plan ahead so you can really get stuck into the work that needs to be done. And there are some things no one wants to increase rents. Nobody wants to have to deal with complaints. But these are all things that have to be looked at for us to be able to go and get the things done. Officers have worked really hard, and I know that some councillors have had their input, and it has been brilliant to have that. What we need to do is we need to make sure that our houses are not just a decent standard, but are above, so they are a home for the people that live there, and that we are landlords not to be ashamed of. And I think this plan does exactly that. So thank you.
I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Member, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Hendry, may I take your vote, please? 4.
Councillor Beer, may I take your vote, please?
Approve.
Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote, please?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Newman? Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 23 votes for and 1 abstention, so that's carried, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now take a small break because we're 2 hours into the meeting. So we'll have a comfort break of 5 minutes. 7, Babergh and Mid-Suffolk Economic Strategy, and I'd like to invite Councillor Derek Davis, Cabinet Member for Sustainable Economy, to introduce the paper and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. We've recently developed our economic strategy, and this evening we're asking the members to approve, to take note and to approve of the strategy which we've worked together with Mid-Suffolk to produce. We've also worked in order to develop the strategy with a number of partners within Suffolk and further afield to help develop this, so it will be good to go for the future, certainly all the time that Babergh is in existence. The vision is to help create a resilient, more sustainable future for all residents and communities of Babergh. We've highlighted the plan in order to secure a thriving economy, and that helps to prioritise and promote the green economy, champion solutions of retrofitting renewable energy, promoting higher paid, higher skilled, sustainable jobs for all, and we just look to develop in every aspect of the business strategy, of the economic strategy. At the moment, this is just a strategy. We have an action plan which will come along in a couple of months' time. That will add even more teeth, and you'll be able to see exactly what we mean when we move this forward. That encompasses a whole range of things to help with the skills and improve economy, working to ensure that we fit in with the Armed Forces Covenant as we move forward, because we have a lot of great ex-service people leaving the services that are in the Suffolk area, in the Babergh district, who offer a huge amount of skills, that transferable skills that will help our economy grow. So the recommendations are there for you to see. In the main, it is to endorse the clear long-term vision and accompanying sets of ambitions, aims and objectives, that the economic strategy be approved as part of the Council's major policy framework, that the Director of Sustainable Communities and Economy, in consultation with the relevant Cabinet members, must be delegated authority to make amendments and update the strategy in response to changing needs. And as we know, the economy grows and things change, things get better, and we want to be at the forefront of that. And that the Director for Sustainable Communities and Economy, in consultation with the Cabinet member, be delegated authority to develop an associated action plan to ensure delivery against the ambitions contained within the strategy, and that the action plan will be brought back to the Cabinet for approval in March. Hopefully March.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Now, before we move to questions, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor McGraw. And we now move to questions. Shouldn't have to repeat myself, but you can ask as many as you wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion, and must be a question and not be of a personal or commercial nature. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Davis, you state on page 133 in the recommendations 3.2 to be approved as part of the Council's major policy framework, replace and open for business. Well, we're certainly not open for business. We've just increased car parking charges, which has caused the biggest problem. My question is now coming. On page 134, supporting local businesses is about halfway down 4.2. How is that supporting local businesses, shops and what have you, with increased car parking charges, going to help? How is it? Please explain it to me. Explain it to the people we serve. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that. Babergh has an economy that thrives throughout Babergh. Not just in Sudbury, not just in Hadley, but everywhere. The car parking charges, you don't know yet if they've made any difference whatsoever. No, you're just guessing. And you're just... I'm answering your question. Okay? You are saying things that have no basis of fact. Babergh is open for business, and we're growing, and the economy continues to thrive in Babergh. You look at both those high streets, and you'll see the vacancy rates are down. You'll see that against the national average, the vacancy rates are very good, and they're getting better. And the team that are out there working that will make sure that everything is there. So please, don't use your political grandstanding to try and put down an economic strategy which works for everybody in the district and Mid-Suffolk and Suffolk, and is there for everybody, and it sees that the whole economy grows.
Entitled to your opinion, but you're only entitled to ask questions at this time. You are not entitled to barrack another councillor. The councillor was giving you his reply to your question.
I did not.
And I will not entertain gentlemen or ladies behaving in the way you two have behaved tonight. And you're still trying to override my speech. So do you wish to stay, or are you going to behave?
Because it's quite clear you're not prepared to allow me to answer his...
You had the opportunity, but you do not interject. You have the courtesy to allow a fellow member to speak and express themselves. Anyone else have a question? And it has to be a question, not scoring points. Councillor McGraw.
I'd like to ask, sorry, I apologise, Chair. I'd like to ask what processes the strategy has been through already and how long it has taken, and what examination it has already received that was open to every single member of this chamber.
Yeah, happily to answer that, and I'm sure I've got Michelle and Nicola here who have been absolutely outstanding in helping to put this economic strategy together. We've consulted with a huge number of businesses. We've held workshops in Ipswich and Mid-Suffolk. I've also held some Ipswich and in Sudbury. We've consulted with a large number of businesses to do that. The economy was obviously being worked on since the new administration came in May last year, and that's the economy strategy is part of the whole policy of making sure that we have sustainable growth for our people, places within Babergh.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd just like to ask Councillor Davis, please. You mentioned about a higher level of occupancy in our retail outlets, or retail establishments, should we say. Is there any analysis done as to the nature of those businesses? Because we tend to have a lot of charity shops, hairdressers and barbers, and I'm just wondering whether any analysis is done on the overall profile of retail establishments across the county and the future sustainability and vitality of those businesses, please. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question, and yes, and I'll hand that over to Michelle because she's got the data in depth. I've seen the data, but I can't remember it all. And the team has got the data in depth there. But of course, in terms of high streets, what opens up, it's market driven to an extent. You know, you'll know as well that shoppers go in there. There is a need, sadly, for charity shops. There is obviously there's a desire for people to have their haircuts and everything like that. And I see the same when I go out shopping and see the sort of places. But there is a good mix in both towns, and it's fantastic because both towns, Sudbury and Hadley, I guess you're talking about, but it could be the same for Lavenham. You look at the villages, the bigger villages like East Burgolt, Holbrook. You know, again, they have an attraction, and we have a lot to offer in our towns here and in Mid-Suffolk. A lot of people visit, you know, and people shouldn't talk the towns down and shouldn't be negative about them because there's a lot of positive things going on throughout the district. But I'll hand to Michelle to tell you a bit more detail about the analysis.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, in answer to the question, we do record not just the vacancy rates for the individual town centres, but also the makeup and the use class of every unit within each town centre. We record that on a quarterly basis to look at any patterns of change, any challenges around long-term vacant units, and any clusters of specific types of uses. So it could be charity shops, or it could be vape shops or phone shops as examples, in order to try and make sure that where we are looking at targeting new shops coming into the town, that we try and make sure that we've got a balance across different types of uses. The information that I think we've got it for, as an example for Sudbury, over almost 60% of the existing shops within Sudbury are in Class A1, which is traditional retail, and we do break that down into a bit more detail if it would be of interest to you.
Just to make sure, I have nothing against charity shops. I frequent them a lot and buy a lot of things there. But one of the things I wanted to ask, sorry to bring this up, but when we were debating the parking charges, there was some mention made of whether there was going to be any exception made for people who were working in charity shops, who were usually a lot of them had their shifts of 3 hours so that they could take advantage of that free parking. And I'm just wondering what sort of impact that might have on the quite large number of charity shops in those 3 main places. Sorry to bring up parking charges again, but it's quite important. Thanks.
I don't mind you bringing up car parking charges in the civilised manner that you've just done. And in answer to the charitable, I totally understand. You know, these are volunteers, they're not getting paid. I understand, because I've done volunteer work as well, that a certain amount of expenses is paid by the charities, which is not always great because it comes out of the admin costs, and obviously we want the money to go directly to whatever that charity is for. During the car parking debate, as you know, and when the paper went to Cabinet, it was decided that that wouldn't happen in terms of giving refunds for charity shops, and I believe that's still the case. But I'd be more than happy to make sure Mark Ems or the leader gets back to you on that to make sure what I'm saying is 100% correct.
Okay.
Councillor Davis is correct.
Councillor Saw.
I can confirm that Councillor Davis is correct, that charity shop volunteers will have to pay for car parking. But they, as everyone knows, are exceptionally popular and exceptionally trendy.
Any other questions? Councillor Register and then Councillor McLaren.
This is a very interesting economic policy document. I would ask, what is the point in having an economic strategy with no clearly measurable targets, which I think would probably have appreciated by some colleagues, members across the way there. But furthermore, since the strategic authority will be leading on economic strategy probably from 2027, is this a policy with a very short-term life, or will it be adjusted to reflect any changes to economic policies strategy coming from the strategic authority?
Yeah, excuse me, I've got my back to you, but I'm trying to speak into the speaker, yeah. I don't know is the answer for the length of the life of this particular policy. It may look a little bit nebulous now until we see the action plan, you know, coming forward in March, hopefully. What happens after that? And it was also deliberately designed, and the officers have worked very hard to make sure that strategically it fits in with all our partners, fits in with Mid-Suffolk, fits in with the Suffolk policy. So therefore, it will be easily adaptable because Babergh very probably won't be an entity in 2, 3, 4 years' time. But until that time, this is our strategy. This helps to drive the economy going forward. you know, we can't wait to see what the others are doing. We need to carry on making sure that our economy thrives while we're here.
Thank you, Chair. We all know that in each of our communities, the pub, the local pub, is or should be the centre of the community. But in two of my villages, the pub has gone. Now, what has happened? In one village, the group, parish council plus others, have set up a pop-up pub, which has been extremely successful. What my question is, will there be some financial support, say, for people who are trying to be innovative in our villages? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary, and again, apologies for having my back to me. The short answer is yes, in a way. Michelle, again, is an expert on business grants and funding. We have a fantastic team, as you know, communities team that work with that, and so we will offer as much support as we can. I think it's absolutely vital. Probably people that know me will understand this. You've got to keep the pubs going, and to do that, you've got to use them. So I do my absolute best within Babergh to make sure that I support all the pubs on the peninsula and further afield. Yeah. But Nicola can give you an answer in terms of the grants.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, in terms of the type of support that we can currently provide, we do have access to a number of government grants that might be suitable for that type of project. Because of the changes in funding, slightly longer term, we don't know what funding we might have available in the next couple of years. But that type of project would certainly be the type that we would look to support where funding is available to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maybury.
Thank you, Chairman. Two questions, quite short. 4.2 on page 134, last sort of bullet pointer from the end, you asked, there is a statement, attracting inward investment and responsible tourism. What criteria do we have for responsible tourism, please?
I think that will become clearer within the action plan. But in terms of responsible tourism, obviously we want to make sure that towns are not completely flooded with tourists. But yeah, it's great. Lavenham is a terrific example of tourism, you know, at its absolute best. It's a beautiful place within Suffolk, and people will obviously want to go there. But along with that are issues, as you'd be more than well aware of. And so we have to try and deal with that as much as we can. We also need to support businesses. The Crooked House at Lavenham won our Business Innovations Award. Fantastic place. And that's the sort of thing we want to encourage. And in terms of, again, responsible tourism, it's difficult. For example, a little bit further afield, John will tell you about Flatford Mill and some of the issues there. So we're working to make sure that we grow the economy, but we try to make sure it doesn't have a destabilising effect on our towns and villages as well. But I'm sure if there's a particular definition you're looking for, Michelle will be able to give you that.
Last question, thank you. On page 135, 6.4, no, 6.5, got my thumb over that. There are 5 key opportunities to focus to underpoint wider strategy. One of them is the food and drink sector. And I'm asking if you can confirm that for this sector, there will be an emphasis to promote healthier options as we are trying to encourage health and well-being.
Again, the short answer would be yes, that would be fantastic. We would love to see that, especially, and this is more in the planning domain, where we look to make sure that takeaway outlets and other such food places are discouraged within the schools. That's in place at the moment. That's part of the new MPPF, and that's really important. In terms of, again, the economy, growing the economy, we have to be mindful of the market in general. We want to encourage business. We don't want a chip shop owner, for example, to say, oh, I want to open up in Lavenham High Street, I'm not saying, but anywhere, and us saying, oh no, you can't have chips, go away. But at the same time, we have to be balanced about that. And so the MPPF is helping in one way on that, but we will encourage all growth. And the Food and Drink Centre is hugely important to Babergh. And again, we saw that with the Innovation Awards. Again, another award winner, James White, was fantastic with the produce that they're doing, local stuff for local people. And that's really healthy things as well.
No more questions, so we can move on to debate. Who would like to open the debate? You wish to open the debate, Councillor Clover? Yes?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I think I'll pick up on Councillor Register's point, is that really, given what the timelines on this is, how long will it take to make this operable? And therefore, is it viable in terms of trying to implement something that actually has got a short life? That would be that's a question as well as a statement.
We're going to hit the ground running. So from day one, as soon as the action plan's in place, the teams put so much effort and so much hard work into this, and it's really important for all of us. Like I say, for all businesses, for our armed forces families and the people transitioning to Civvy Street, to the economy, to tourists, just about everything. So we want to do it straight away. Yes, we appreciate it might just have a short life, so yeah, we're going to crack on with it straight away and get it going.
Does anybody else wish to debate? Councillor Ward, Councillor Maybury.
Just briefly, I know there's been a huge amount of work put into this, and there are a number of engagement activities. I was involved in one. It's a thorough strategy, and it's very fit for purpose for our district. It fits in with the Suffolk strategy that the Business Board, which is the successor to the LEP, has produced. So I think in tandem, we can go forward with both of these with great confidence that they're going to help our businesses. I do take the point that given the present plans for devolution and the setting up of a mayoral strategic authority, where there'll be overarching responsibility for economic growth, there are concerns about the potential lifetime of this, but hopefully it will still have a longer life within the context of that devolution programme, and also any local government reorganisation that might accompany that, and that any successor council, if that happens to Babergh, will be able to pick up on this and run with it. They may wish to make some changes, but at least it's there as a foundation for the future. So I'm very happy to vote for this and support this. Thank you.
My point really is we all know within our area that our wages, our salaries are not as high as in other areas, and it takes an awful lot of effort from people to actually purchase a home or even rent a home. Was 11.5 times to buy a property in Babergh. That may have changed. I haven't kept up with it. What I would like to see within this is the fact that we are moving away from the lower paid, shall we say, jobs and economy to something much greater. I think we have the scope, especially around Sudbury, for an aviation specialism area. I have mentioned this before. I mentioned it when I was in the Cabinet, and I cannot see why we have not done that. Cambridge has a scientific quarter. Sudbury and surrounding areas could have the aviation quarter. And I think we really need, if we're going to get behind this, if we're going to say that we can do this, and that it will be taken forward when devolution comes through, that we are actually looking for jobs for our people, for our future, for our children who are in school at the moment,
for those who move away because there aren't any jobs, that we have better paid jobs. I have 4 children. None of them work around here. And that is such a shame for me to say that. Someone who's born and brought up in this area, that none of them work around here. So what we need to do is to make sure that we have the best for our future generations. And if we can get that, then I will be behind this. But at the moment, I am very worried about it. We need better jobs for our people.
Councillor Davis, would you like to sum up? Because I'm assuming that there are no more members wishing to debate.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good point that you've made. And I personally have been working, lobbying almost. It's not quite the aviation industry, but there's a need for drones, both civilian and military. And we have a couple of really good regeneration areas, Sudbury, Grantham, and Hadley as well. So that's possible. And yeah, they will be higher paid jobs because they require more skills. And as I mentioned earlier, it's important that the strategy fits in with the Armed Forces Covenant to make sure that our ex-forces that are leaving the services are not disadvantaged. And of course, we have a wealth of talent in Suffolk. You know, the flying station Watersham is a great example of people that work there, have immense skills. And if they leave the services, we need them transferable. However, at the same time, we have to remember, as we've talked about, that the food and drink sector, tourism, is really important to our area. And of course, they're not high-paid jobs. They're not. Of course, and we have great colleges that are teaching people the other chefing skills. For example, we've got on the peninsula a chef that's been recognised nationally for her the work. She's at Suffolk 1, but she's from the peninsula. And so those skills and top paid chefs are highly paid, even in Suffolk. Yeah, they're really well paid. So there are opportunities there, and the team are working with the schools and the universities and the colleges to make sure that the skill level comes up. So and also with apprentices and other factors. So I totally agree with you. The whole point of the strategy is to make the economy thrive. That's why we've got it. And we will see the action plan will have more bite, and we'll be able to pinpoint there's certain areas that will do that. But yeah, absolutely. You know, we need to get our areas regenerated. They've been stagnant too long. There's a lot of businesses that want to invest in Suffolk. People coming back, it's really, we had one of the workshops, we had this conversation, we had a very senior person from Cambridge actually, and she was saying that, her business is in Cambridge, she was telling us that one of the main things that come back, people go off to universities, I'm sure your children probably did the same, go to university, see a different side of life. They can get an Uber, for example. You know, you can't get an Uber. Well, you can now just about in Ipswich, but it's things like that that we need to work with our partners. We can't do it on our own. Babergh can't do it on our own. But as our economic growth strategy will show, that we have resilience in the economy here. And you know, by talking up the towns and by talking up our workforce, we can help achieve that. And that's the point of this strategy. And I hope you will all back it. Thank you.
I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. You might have to scroll down a bit to the blue line. Councillor Hendry, may I take your vote? 4. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote, please?
4.
Thank you, members. That is 19 votes for, one vote against and 2 abstentions. So, Chair, that's carried.
Thank you very much. We now move forward to paper BC 2438, Contract Standing Orders. I'd like to invite Councillor John Ward, Cabinet Member for Finance, Assets and Investments, to introduce this paper and to move the recommendation in the report. Councillor Ward.
Sorry. I was doing this. I need to finish it.
Right, done. Okay. Hopefully it won't take too long over this. We're near to the end of the evening, so I'd like to introduce paper BC 2438 to update the Council's contract standing orders, which are contained in Part 3 Rules of Procedure of our Constitution. The proposed changes are required to ensure that the Council complies with the Procurement Act 2023, which comes into force on the 24th of February. There are 2 appendices to this report. Appendix A contains the revised contract standing orders, and Appendix B provides a list of the changes that have been made. In addition to changes to reflect the Procurement Act 2023, there are also some good practice additions in line with key themes from the new legislation, such as high-value service contracts to have a minimum of 3 KPIs. Amendments have also been made to reflect changes of name role to ensure greater clarity and reflect the current practice where the standing orders have been silent. For example, the requirement for quotations to include a local supplier and an SME, which in the main was happening but wasn't a requirement in our standing orders. Our standing orders remain as overarching principles to work to, with practical detail of how to undertake procurement outlined in our procurement manual. We're now working on the procurement manual to ensure that it is revised in line with the Procurement Act 2023 in time for the 24th February deadline. There are no changes to the standing orders regarding the sourcing process and values we are currently working to. Changes to the type of procurement processes to use at tender stage as a result of the Procurement Act 2023 will be outlined in the procurement manual. The authorisation levels detailed within current contract standing orders have not been changed. So I'd now like to propose the recommendation in Section 3 that the changes to the Council's contract standing orders as set out in Appendix A be approved. And I'd like to thank Katrina Browning, Head of Procurement, for all her hard work preparing this paper, and she is here to answer any questions you may have. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Saw. Members, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that in accordance with the Council's Constitution, the guillotine rule must be applied as the meeting has lasted for nearly 3 hours. Members may decide to extend the meeting until the business on the agenda has been completed. Can I have a proposer and a seconder to continue? Councillor Ward. Councillor Jameson seconding. Thank you very much. And we need a vote. By show of hands? Okay, unanimous, I think. Yeah. Okay, we now have questions regarding the contract standing orders. Does anybody have any questions? No? No? Oh, we move to debate. Does anybody wish to open the debate? Councillor Saw.
Thank you, Chair. I do think the alteration to allow local businesses and SMEs to participate in procurement, even though that was actually operating procedure before, is very helpful because it actually reinforces the economic strategy. And we do want to encourage, as a council, local businesses and particularly SMEs, especially as the majority of our businesses in Babergh are SMEs. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for the debate? Can we move to the vote? I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Councillor Hendry, may I take your vote, please? Thank you. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote, please? 4. Thank you. Thank you, members. That is 22 votes for, so that's carried.
Thank you very much. I now move on to councillor appointments. The appointments are listed on the agenda, and I'm asking, are there any further changes to these appointments? This is to agree the following appointments and to note the attached terms of reference for the Biodiversity Working Group. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Davies. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Saw. I'll now ask the Acting Head of Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. You have to scroll quite far down to find the blue line.
Hugely down.
Councillor Hendry, may I take your vote, please? Thank you. Councillor Grandin, may I take your vote, please?
4.
Thank you. Councillor Derek Davis, may I take your vote, please? Thank you. Oh, has it? It's 4, thank you. No, it's not. That's 18 votes for. Thank you, members. That's 20 votes for and that's 2 against, so that's carried.
Okay, thank you. Now, before I close the meeting, the next meeting is an extraordinary, simultaneous meeting, not a joint, not a combined, but a simultaneous council meeting between Babergh, involving Babergh and Mid-Suffolk. And that's on the 10th of February, a Monday, at 5:30 p.m. And the meeting will be chaired for yourselves by me and for Mid-Suffolk by Councillor Pratt. And I now declare the meeting at 20:22 to be closed.